All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. You are live and direct once again with your Akazaki Yahoo, and I'm giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh Bashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say shalom, wa baruki, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together, and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. All praises to the Almighty Yah. Hallelujah.
So be it. Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined this evening by my most esteemed Kenaniah. Shalom, Aki.
Hey, salam alaikum, Aki. Salam alaikum, Yasharal. Kwam Yashala.
All praises, all praises. Peace be unto you. Shalom alaikum. Peace be unto you. And Shalaikum salam. Peace be unto you as well. Rise Israel. Rise Yashar. Rise Yashar. Indeed. We sure need that. Hallelujah. All right. We're going to get into this video review. And I titled this video, All People Are Not People. And we're going to get into why that's the case. So let's jump straight to it and get.
Are washcloth people real? Are there actually people who take these tiny towels into the shower, put soap on them, and rub them all over their body? It all just seems a little gross to me, honestly.
So the people who bring this in to the shower and put the soap on it and then put that on their body, they're gross. The people who do put the soap on a washcloth and wash are the gross ones. I know you musty. I know you musty. I know you musty. I know you are musty.
A tweet, a washcloth, and suddenly centuries of racial tension exploded online. A white woman confessed she doesn't use one. Black Twitter wasn't amused. The internet split in two. But this isn't just about bathing habits. Why do black families treat the washcloth as sacred? And why do so many white Americans skip it altogether? Let's find out. It happened fast. What seemed like a passing comment on social media turned into a national uproar. A white user casually admitted they didn't use washcloths in the shower, and within hours, the internet split down racial lines. Black users flooded platforms with disbelief, memes, and memories. It was clear this wasn't just about bathing. This was about something buried deep in American identity. What emerged was a stunning cultural divide. While many black families viewed the washcloth as essential, used in every bath, passed down through generations, countless white users admitted they never used one at all. Some didn't own any. Some never thought about it. Others even found it strange. A mundane hygiene product had suddenly become the lens through which centuries of racial tension, class difference, and cultural inheritance were magnified. As the conversation escalated, the humor began to fade. What surfaced instead was a bitter realization. For some, personal hygiene had always been optional, casual, even rebellious. For others, it was ingrained as a matter of dignity and defense. The tone grew sharp. It became clear that the ability to joke about not bathing was tied to a kind of unspoken social immunity, one that not everyone had. Celebrities chimed in and added fuel to the fire. Some proudly described showering less often or avoiding soap on most of the body. These comments, rather than calming the storm, made it worse. To many, they confirmed what had long been suspected. Certain people could afford to be unclean because society never expected them to be clean in the first place. But the washcloth was never just about physical cleanliness. It symbolized something far heavier. For many Black Americans, using a washcloth wasn't a quirky preference. It was tradition. It was survival. It was how you ensured no one had reason to judge your appearance, your body, or your worth. A simple bathing habit had become a ritual of protection, a shield against judgment that never seemed to rest. The online battle lines were clear. On one side, casual comfort, indifference, even pride in minimalist hygiene. On the other hand, meticulous routine taught from childhood, shaped by the need to overcompensate in a world quick to label. The divide was generational, cultural, and deeply racial. An invisible rulebook no one remembered writing, but everyone seemed to follow. And yet, almost no one stopped to ask, how did this divide even begin? How did something so small become a trigger for outrage, pride, and centuries of buried pain? The answer doesn't lie in today's showers. It lies in yesterday's history, in the way Black and white Americans were raised to see water, soap, and even their skin. To understand why the washcloth debate struck such a nerve, we have to go back, way back. Because this story didn't start with a tweet. It started long before indoor plumbing, in places where people had to scrub not just dirt, but stigma. Long before the Atlantic crossing, bathing in many West and Central African societies was both practical and spiritual. Rivers doubled as meeting places and cleansing sites where people rubbed the skin with rough palm fibers, sponge gourds, or braided grass pads that scoured sweat and clay without soap. In coastal cities, traders set aside blocks for communal bathhouses. Farther inland, households kept earthen pots of water near the entrance for ritual rinsing after farm work. Clean skin signified respect for ancestors and readiness for worship, habits as old as the kingdoms themselves. That reverence collided with the filth of the Middle Passage. Captives endured cramped holds where waste pooled at their feet. Illness festered in damp darkness. When they reached plantations, the contrast between their inherited standards of washing and the neglect of enslavers was stark. Owners allotted soap sparingly, if at all. Sometimes a palm-sized chunk once a month, sometimes nothing. Fields demanded sunrise to sunset labor, leaving little water or privacy. To scrape away red clay, insect bites, and sweat, enslaved families tore worn feed sacks into small squares, stiffened them over a fire, and fashioned improvised scouring cloths. Rough but effective, they required minimal soap, stretching the tiny ration. Each evening, after hauling pails from a well or creek, families set a metal kettle on the cabin hearth. Warm water went into a shallow tin basin. Children learned to dip the rag, lather a corner, and scrub until the water darkened. Elbows, knees, neck creases, nothing could be missed, because missing a spot invited ridicule from overseers who equated grime with laziness. The cloth became the centerpiece of a nightly ritual that reinforced kinship. Elders cleaned infants while trading stories. Adolescents tested their independence by washing alone. Everyone understood that a spotless body pushed back against a system built on dehumanization. Across the plantation line, most white colonists followed very different rules. Many still subscribed to medieval European fears that full immersion spread disease. Some counted on perfumed linen shirts to mask odor rather than remove it. Weekly sponge wipes or summer river dips sufficed. This double standard widened the cultural gap. The enslaved, denied basics, nevertheless pursued rigorous washing, while those in power dismissed frequent bathing as unnecessary. Over time, the cloth, in any form available, became a quiet badge of discipline in the quarters, and a symbol of difference viewers rarely acknowledged. Emancipation did not dissolve the habit. Freed people living in sharecropper shacks or self-built settlements rarely obtained indoor plumbing, so the basin wash continued. Saturday night assumed special importance. Families boiled water, shaved homemade lye and pork fat soap into it, and scoured themselves in preparation for Sunday church. Cleanliness marked respectability in pews and a new claim to citizenship. Mothers stored stacks of tiny wash rags, each assigned to one child, stitched from flour sack cloth and bleached in the sun. When the Great Migration carried millions northward, the cloth traveled too, stuffed into trunk corners alongside photo albums and sweetgrass fans. Tenement apartments in Chicago or Harlem often shared a hallway bathroom, so migrants kept personal wash rags for privacy and hygiene. Public bathhouses barred black patrons or charged double, reinforcing self-reliance. Even industrial jobs that supplied locker room towels seldom provided individual face cloths, so workers brought their own. The washcloth was now more than a tool. It was generational evidence of resilience, a mobile safeguard in hostile spaces. By the early 20th century, this deeply rooted practice stood on a collision course with a rising tide of racist advertising that painted black bodies as inherently unclean. How those images twisted reality and how Black Americans responded forms the next chapter of the washcloth's long, complicated journey. By the early 1900s, a subtle but ruthless war had begun, not with guns, but with soap. While Black households were refining their rituals of scrubbing, lathering, and basin bathing in homes without plumbing, white-dominated industries were hard at work redefining what clean meant in America. They weren't just selling soap. They were selling ideology, and in their ads, clean meant white, literally. Major soap manufacturers used the explosive growth of newspapers and magazines to push their products into every American home. But to make those ads unforgettable, they used the imagery of race. Dark skin in these illustrations was not just different, it was dirt itself. Children with brown or black skin were often drawn as dull, grimy figures who became miraculously white once lathered in a brand-name bar of soap. In other versions, black characters were laughed at, embarrassed, or shamed for not knowing how to clean themselves properly. The implication was clear. Whiteness wasn't just the goal, it was the proof of cleanliness. This campaign of visual racism wasn't confined to fringe publications. It showed up in mail-order catalogs, pharmacy windows, and children's storybooks. The most insidious part wasn't just that these images dehumanized Black people. It was that they made the lie look wholesome. Soap companies framed their racism as family-friendly advice, as though they were lifting the unwashed into civilization. They used smiling white children as messengers of purity and depicted blackness as something to be wiped away. While white audiences consumed these messages with amusement or indifference, Black communities watched with a mix of fury and heartbreak. These weren't just insulting cartoons. They reinforced a much older and more dangerous belief that Black people were physically less clean, and by extension, morally less worthy. This thinking didn't stay in the ads. It seeped into institutions, into schools, health clinics, and public policy. White public health officials during this era regularly described Black communities as unhygienic by default. Medical journals speculated that Black families spread disease more easily, not because of infrastructure neglect, but because of personal habits. Landlords used cleanliness excuses to deny Black tenants access to better apartments. Even urban sanitation plans assumed that Black neighborhoods needed harsher cleaning methods, often without ever asking residents what resources they lacked. The irony was brutal. While Black families were boiling water, reusing rags, and scrubbing religiously out of both necessity and pride, they were being portrayed as unwilling to wash. At the same time, many white homes enjoyed indoor plumbing, scented soaps, and water heaters, but still washed irregularly, sometimes just using perfumed powders and changing clothes to give the illusion of cleanliness. The result was a system where Black Americans were held to higher standards with fewer resources and still labeled dirty. The washcloth, which had long been a symbol of care and tradition in Black life, was now also a shield against stereotype. Each wipe, each rinse, each scoured knee became an act of quiet resistance, a refusal to live down to the image forced upon them. These racist portrayals created a trap. If a Black person was unkempt, they were proof of the stereotype. If they were pristine, it was seen as an exception. Either way, the burden of disproving the lie rested entirely on the individual, and the pressure didn't stop at childhood. It extended into adulthood, into job interviews, doctor's offices, school halls, and everyday encounters, always unspoken, always expected. As the 20th century wore on, Black Americans didn't just clean themselves, They overcleaned, hyper-aware that one wrong impression could carry the weight of an entire race. It wasn't about vanity, it was about defense. And that defense would evolve into a powerful philosophy, one that came to define how many Black communities taught self-presentation, respect, and survival in a hostile world. That story, how hygiene turned into armor, begins next. Once racism had rebranded Blackness as dirt, the response from Black communities wasn't to argue with the stereotype, it was to obliterate it through action. Across generations, a new kind of personal code emerged, one that elevated cleanliness from a private habit to a public strategy of survival. You weren't just keeping yourself clean, you were protecting your entire community's image. This mentality didn't come from institutions, it came from living rooms, porches, and kitchen sinks, where elders taught children how to care for their bodies with a level of precision that bordered on ritual. You didn't bathe just to feel good. You bathed because stepping outside with ashy skin, greasy hair, or musty clothes could be the beginning of a public unraveling. If a Black child showed up at school looking disheveled, it didn't reflect just on them. It reflected on their family, their neighborhood, even their race. So families adapted. They created unspoken rules and routines to counter the gaze that never turned off. Showers weren't rushed, they were thorough. You used soap, then rinsed, then repeated. You didn't just scrub your arms and legs. You lifted, bent, reached, and inspected. Certain body parts, like the neck, behind the ears, elbows, and knees, were given special attention. Dry skin wasn't a beauty issue, it was a social hazard. That's why moisturizing after a bath became as essential as bathing itself, because flaky skin could be weaponized as evidence of neglect. This hyper-awareness extended into scent. Smelling off wasn't a minor embarrassment, it was a threat to dignity. In many Black households, children were raised to never leave home without deodorant, cologne, or lotion. If someone passed by and left a trail of unpleasant body odor, the shame wasn't private. It echoed. And in a world where Black bodies were already burdened with negative expectations, the consequences of not meeting hygiene standards could be brutal socially, economically, and psychologically. This is why, for many Black communities, hygiene became political long before anyone called it that. The washcloth, already steeped in ancestral memory, became a symbol of control. You couldn't control whether someone saw your skin as a threat, but you could control whether they saw it as dirty. And in a society where a single look could influence whether someone trusted you, served you, hired you, or even feared you, that control became vital. The logic was clear. If the world was going to watch you harder, you had to clean harder. If the world expected you to fail a basic standard, you had to exceed it every single day. It wasn't about gaining acceptance. It was about rejecting humiliation. Even within the Black community, these expectations were reinforced not through fear alone, but through pride. A well-groomed appearance was a badge of honor, a visible marker that said, despite everything we're denied, we keep ourselves sharp. It showed up in church pews, on school photos, and at family gatherings, places where Black excellence wasn't just spoken, but displayed. And often, that display began with a washcloth, a bar of soap, and 10 minutes of careful work. It's easy to mistake this culture of rigorous self-care for vanity or strictness, but beneath it lies something far more complex: the deep psychological impact of having to prove one's humanity over and over. For decades, Black people in America were denied the luxury of casualness, of smelling off one day, of skipping a step, of being seen as just human. Cleanliness became one of the few realms they could fully control. But even as Black communities built this resilient hygiene culture from the inside out, external forces continued to deny them access to the very tools that made that culture possible. Because the next battle wasn't just about perception, it was about infrastructure. And that fight began in the pipes. By the time the mid-20th century rolled around, America was entering the age of convenience. White suburbs boomed with rows of identical homes equipped with shiny bathrooms, porcelain tubs, water heaters, and polished towel racks. Bathtubs were advertised in catalogs. Scented soaps and pastel-colored sinks became signs of middle-class comfort. For many white families, hygiene became an aesthetic, not just something you did, but something that looked good in pictures. But this sanitized vision of American cleanliness wasn't built for everyone. Entire black neighborhoods, especially in the rural South and segregated urban centers, were left out of the upgrade. While politicians cut ribbons for new suburban plumbing systems, many black households were still collecting water in buckets, heating it on stoves, and bathing in basins. The federal government's housing policies had carved out these inequalities with surgical precision. Redlining ensured that black families were shut out of mortgage programs, which meant no access to newly built homes and no access to the private bathrooms that came with them. So the washcloth stayed, not out of habit, out of pure necessity. Here's a quick reminder. Please like, share, and subscribe to Black Culture Unlocked for powerful Black news, real stories of our heroes and leaders, and the rich culture and history the world tried to forget. In homes without showers or running hot water, a bar of soap and a basin of warm water had to stretch. There was no time or luxury for soaking. The washcloth became the perfect instrument, efficient, portable, easy to rinse, and capable of cleaning every crevice. With it, one could scrub properly, even in a tiny kitchen corner or in front of a fireplace on cold nights. For many families, bath time wasn't just a chore, it was a whole operation. Water had to be boiled, tested, and reused carefully. The cloth wasn't optional, it was the center of it all. Even in cities, the divide was clear. Apartment buildings in black neighborhoods were often older, under-maintained, and poorly ventilated. Landlords delayed repairs. Entire blocks shared inadequate plumbing. Public bathhouses that did exist were either segregated or closed altogether, forcing black families to depend solely on what they could build at home. Meanwhile, white developments were rapidly modernizing, turning bathing into a casual daily ritual requiring minimal effort or thought. That's what made the washcloth a symbol not just of cultural memory, but of infrastructure resistance. In communities where the system denied access to modern hygiene, families made their systems, passed down through discipline, creativity, and relentless care. And unlike loofahs, sponges, or puffballs marketed later in department stores, the washcloth didn't need replacing every few weeks. It was reused, cleaned, folded, and put right back on the rack. It didn't represent wealth, but it did represent function and respect. These conditions hardened the habit. Generations of black children were raised in environments where the washcloth wasn't just standard, it was sacred. It meant you were doing it right. You were doing what your parents did, and their parents before them. You were honoring a method that kept your body clean, even when the system wouldn't provide you with the tools to do so easily. Even when black families began gaining more access to modern bathrooms and full plumbing, the cultural memory didn't fade. The washcloth wasn't replaced by new gadgets or Western trends. It had been too important for too long. It had kept people clean through neglect, abandonment, and deliberate exclusion. It worked when nothing else did. So when critics or influencers casually dismiss the washcloth today, it doesn't come off as opinion. It feels like historical erasure. It forgets how a small square of fabric carried entire families through times when soap and water were all they had, and when even those were rationed. But as infrastructure evolved, so did the fight over who had the right to define cleanliness. And that fight would resurface in the most unexpected place of all, a tweet that would tear the internet in half. For years, the divide over hygiene practices simmered quietly in American households, rarely spoken about but deeply felt. Then came the internet. What had once been a private difference in bathing routines was suddenly thrown into the global spotlight by something as simple as a casual tweet. A white user posted that they didn't use washcloths, describing them as unsanitary or unnecessary. It wasn't framed as an insult, just a personal preference. But the reaction was volcanic. Thousands of Black users, many of whom had grown up believing the washcloth was essential, responded with disbelief. Not because they couldn't imagine a different hygiene routine, but because the comment felt ignorant of context. It wasn't just the act of not using a washcloth, it was the casual tone, the idea that this decision was neutral, even superior, without any awareness of the cultural weight behind it. The comment thread grew fast, and it became clear this wasn't a debate about soap. It was about privilege. Black users brought out memories of being taught to scrub thoroughly, of being sent back to the bathroom if a spot was missed, of being judged more harshly in public for appearing even slightly unkempt. Many had grown up in homes where you were told your skin, your scent, your presentation, it all mattered because the world is looking for a reason to disrespect you. White users, in contrast, defended their habits by saying their hands were sufficient, that they didn't need to exfoliate regularly, or that too much washing dries out the skin. Some dismissed the backlash as overreaction. Others admitted they had never even owned a washcloth. What became clear was that the difference wasn't just in practice, it was in urgency. For one group, not scrubbing was an option. For the other, scrubbing was a duty. The online conversation spilled onto other platforms. TikToks were created, poking fun at the idea of not washing your legs. Instagram posts went up with stacks of washcloths captioned like trophies. And still, the same emotional core remained beneath the humor. This wasn't about cleaning your limbs. It was about how society conditions people to view some bodies as inherently clean and others as inherently suspect. For many Black users, the shock wasn't just the non-use of a washcloth, it was the nonchalance around hygiene altogether. White celebrities began chiming in, confessing they rarely showered or only bathed their children when visibly dirty. These admissions to Black audiences didn't just sound careless, they sounded like something that would be unforgivable if said by someone with darker skin. The washcloth, once a quiet staple in Black households, had now become a social media symbol. One side saw it as an unnecessary relic. The other saw it as a badge of discipline, survival, and cultural continuity. And the digital debate revealed just how deep the unspoken divide had become.
Are washcloths only for poor people? Or rather, is it that only poor people use washcloths? Guys, this is a ridiculous question. I know you feel that way. I do too. It kind of makes me cringe even to ask this, but I'm saying this because apparently two podcasters recently went on their podcast saying that they believed that the use of washcloths was only for those people who were poor, that those were the only people who used them. We know this is ridiculous, and it's even insulting and degrading. I can't even believe somebody would ask this. You know, I grew up using washcloths. I still use them. I recommend people wash with a washcloth and soap. I recommend that to my patients, to myself, to people I know. Of course, there are many different ways to wash and to wash adequately, but that is my preferred style. The idea that someone would associate using a washcloth with socioeconomic status or class seems just wrong. It is wrong. And it worries me that some people will hear that and actually believe it. And that is ridiculous. As you know, I'm a big fan of washcloths. I'm curious, have you ever heard anyone say that they believe washcloth use was related to class or how much money someone had? I'm really curious about this. This type of dialogue is potentially harmful and it's potentially dangerous. It's not healthy. It's not good. It's not even funny. So guys, weigh in the comments. I want to know what you think. As you all know, I am team washcloth and will be forever.
It was never really about the cloth itself. It was about what it represented, the effort required just to be seen as clean versus the ability to be assumed clean by default. This online storm forced a new question into public view. Who gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to hygiene? And who still has to prove it? The answers lie not just in tweets, but in the long generational pressure that shaped Black self-care into something more than personal. It became political. And nowhere was that more evident than in the way Black households raised the next generation. with lessons that were never taught in schools but were etched into daily life. Those lessons are what we turn to next. Long before social media ever turned a washcloth into a symbol of racial identity, Black families were already living the lessons behind the memes. In kitchens, bathrooms, and bedrooms across the country, generations of Black parents, grandparents, and older siblings passed down rules about hygiene, not as chores, but as inherited armor. To grow up in a Black household wasn't just to learn how to bathe, it was to be trained, taught how to be immaculate in a world that might judge you harshly at first glance. You didn't just take a shower, you took it correctly. There were steps, there was structure, and there was no such thing as cutting corners. A child might be sent back to the tub if they came out too fast. Did you use soap? Did you wash your neck, behind your ears, your ankles? The questions weren't optional. They were part of a deeply embedded belief that being clean was more than personal hygiene. It was protection from public scrutiny. You weren't just representing yourself. You were representing your family, your upbringing, and silently but powerfully, your entire race. This pressure wasn't always explained directly. It didn't have to be. The tone in a parent's voice, the sternness in a grandmother's stare when she saw ashy elbows, the careful inspection before leaving the house. These rituals trained children to internalize a code. Never give them a reason to look down on you. Cleanliness wasn't for comfort. It was for defense. These rules went beyond soap and water. There were also routines around lotion, deodorant, clean socks, fresh underwear, pressed clothes, and tidy hair. Dry skin wasn't just a minor flaw. It was something to be actively avoided because it could be read as evidence of neglect. Odor wasn't tolerated, not just because it was unpleasant, but because Black children knew the world would weaponize it against them. The intensity of these lessons often came with love, but also with stress. The pressure to be spotless wasn't rooted in superficial pride. It was rooted in survival logic. In classrooms, stores, job interviews, and traffic stops, presentation could mean the difference between being treated with respect or suspicion. Parents couldn't afford to raise children who didn't understand that. Even in adolescence, when other teens might experiment with skipping showers or being messy, Black teens were often still expected to maintain a polished appearance, not because their families demanded perfection, but because society demanded proof. Proof that you were clean, that you were respectable, that you weren't what the world expected to see when they looked at a Black body. This generational discipline produced a unique form of internalized excellence, a kind of cleanliness ethic, where to be well-groomed, fresh, and neat wasn't about trying to assimilate, but about rejecting disrespect. It was about flipping the narrative. If the world had decided long ago that Blackness was dirty, then being pristine was an act of rebellion. These rituals persist today. Even among Black adults with full access to modern hygiene tools, the early lessons don't fade. The washcloth remains on the rack. The routine is memorized. The pride in being freshly scrubbed, oiled, and prepared is stitched into identity. For those outside the culture, these routines can seem excessive or even puzzling. But for those raised within them, they are second nature, part of the daily choreography that ensures dignity is never in question. And yet, as powerful as these rituals are, they were born from something deeply unfair, a system that forced an entire group to overprove what others were freely granted. This pressure didn't come from nature. It came from policies, media, and power structures that assigned moral weight to how someone looked, smelled, or moved through a space. And that system didn't just operate inside households. It was built into the architecture of America, from segregated bathhouses to denied mortgages. But after all the history, after all the legacy and layers, there's still a lingering shadow, one stubborn idea that hangs in the air. Isn't using a washcloth kind of nasty? This question doesn't always get spoken out loud, but it's often implied on social media, in comments, in side eyes from hotel staff, or product ads that celebrate minimalism. Some people cringe at the idea of reusing a cloth. Others wrinkle their nose at the term wash rag, as if it's unclean by definition. But let's strip the judgment away and ask honestly, what exactly is gross about using a clean piece of cloth to thoroughly scrub your body? Nothing.
Do you use a washcloth? No, me either. I think disgusting. Am I scrubbing my body with a washcloth? Yeah. Absolutely not. I know. I think we're. That is like a UTI waiting to happen. I think we're in the minority. I really do. No, I think we are. People use washcloths? I think so. Like for their body. Yeah.
Fun fact about a washcloth, you can wash them. Using a washcloth is not unhygienic. Some people really benefit from using a washcloth because it offers some gentle mechanical exfoliation, which can be particularly helpful for people who have rough and bumpy skin, otherwise known as keratosis pilaris. However, other people take out all of their aggressions on their skin with the washcloth. They rub so hard, they rub their skin raw, they end up with a lot of dryness, irritation, which is not a good thing. And not good for your hygiene because it makes your skin more hospitable to little critters jumping on board, causing skin infections. One of the advantages, though, of a washcloth over like a loofah, as I pointed out earlier, is that you can wash them, which is super important if you're someone who is prone in particular to getting staph skin infections like impetigo or folliculitis, which is a little breakout in the hair follicle that can even come together into boils. It can be quite debilitating, and a lot of people deal with recurrent bouts of this. If you are using a loofah or you're not washing your washcloth after each use, well, you are going to be spreading.
What is strange is that such a practical, hygienic, time-tested tool has been labeled as backward or dirty. And the more you dig into that judgment, the more you realize this isn't about the cloth. This is about the people who used it first and the assumptions made about them. Throughout American history, the image of the washcloth has been shaped not by science or sanitation, but by racism, classism, and the myth of white purity. Let's be clear, the washcloth is not disgusting, but blackness historically was portrayed as if it were. So by extension, anything associated with black habits was treated as suspect. This isn't new. Foods like okra, grits, and chitlins were once dismissed by mainstream America as gross until rebranded by foodies. Natural hairstyles were called unkempt until they were worn on high-fashion runways. The same dynamic applies here. The washcloth is only dirty when used by the people who were falsely labeled dirty from the start. But here's the reality. Using a clean cloth to wash your body is more hygienic than using your hands alone. It helps remove dead skin, excess oil, and buildup that water alone won't lift. Dermatologists routinely recommend clothes for exfoliation, especially in areas prone to odor. In fact, for people who sweat heavily or work outdoors, using a cloth can be the most effective way to clean the skin. So why the sneer? Why the discomfort? Because the myth of grossness is rarely about function, it's about distance. It's about some people wanting to feel removed from what they associate with poverty or blackness or otherness. In that framework, convenience becomes cleanliness and effort becomes something primitive. But this illusion only works if you ignore facts and history. Let's flip the lens. What if the real question isn't, why do you use a washcloth? But rather, why would you choose not to? Why would you be content washing your entire body with just your hands, especially the parts that build up sweat, oil, and bacteria? Why would reusing a loofah, which traps bacteria in plastic fibers, be seen as sophisticated, while washing and drying a cotton cloth is seen as outdated? The logic doesn't hold. But social programming is stronger than logic. It's also about control. When one group has long been forced to defend its right to be seen as clean, even a washcloth becomes political. And when another group gets to laugh off dirtiness as quirky or natural, that's not hygiene. That's privilege disguised as casualness. So let's call it what it is. The washcloth is not dirty. It's not outdated. It's not backwards. It is one of the simplest, most effective tools for maintaining hygiene, and it has survived for a reason. Because it works, because it matters, because it carries more than soap. It carries memory, culture, and care. If anything's dirty here, it's the way society taught people to look down on something so clean. So, why is being clean a choice for some, but a demand for others? Who taught you what's normal and who got left out? Let us know in the comments section. Do you find this gross or not? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it, because here we tell the stories no one else will. From ancient African civilizations to modern Black excellence, we reveal the truth, the power, and the legacy they tried to erase. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Hey, Shalom, Aki.
Con. Yeah, interesting dynamic, interesting historical facts, and very interested in thinking about the ideology of somebody looking down on a washcloth because of who is using it. And that's where it gets political, where it gets into the politics of the situation of the circumstance. And shower time is one of my favorite times, and I can't imagine a shower without my washcloth. A shower without my washcloth is not a shower. A shower without my washcloth is me playing in the water. You know what I'm saying? So that's not a good resolve for washing off a day of dirt and grime. When you go outside, even when you're inside for so long, you're gonna pick up dirt and other stuff, and that stuff got to be washed away. I love my night shower. Heck, I love a shower in the morning before I walk out the door. The last thing I want to do before I walk out is shower. So I would have never thought that this would be a political issue, but one group see it as a necessity that we enjoy, and another group see it as unnecessary or something poor folks do. Like, I never would have thought in all my life that could, or even perhaps would have even been a thought of a society. Thought everybody would use a washcloth just because of the great job that it does cleaning, and it feels really good. I don't mean that in a unreasonable way. I mean, it feels good to get the dirt off of you. It feels good to know that you're clean, and nothing tells you that like that running that cloth over your skin. I mean, it tells you that you're clean, and that little bit of friction it gives you just amplifies the cleanliness that your body is. So, again, I never thought this would be a political issue, and I surely wouldn't think that somebody would say that's weird or that's gross or something like that. Like, cleaning your body with a towel is gross. I mean, okay, whatever. But I'm thankful that I had a washcloth and I knew to use a washcloth. I don't use it on my face because it damaged my pores. So I tried it and I realized that that's not what go on your face. So I just use the soap and water on my face. But you can dab. You can still dab your face with a towel and create a little bit of friction there. So I'm gonna yield there. That's enough of me talking. Go ahead, Akeem.
Con, you know, I've never pondered this, too much, before. I've been working with children since 1999.
Yeah.
And upon working with, Gentile children, is when I, pretty much figured out that, okay, yeah, they don't use washcloths.
No.
Going back further than that, there has been a stigma in our community to appear clean or to want to be clean. I can remember my grandmother, along with being a beautician, she was also she sold Avon, Avon products. And I can remember her using this one Avon product. It was a cleanser. She was using it on my mother's neck because my mother's neck was dark, and they were trying to get my mama's neck clean. So she rubbed off some dirt on the little pad she was using and showed my mama and showed me. I said, ugh. I said, dang, mama. And my grandmother said, shut up, boy, before I rub it across your face. I was just like, man,
Right.
that's kind of hateful, but so I can remember, even now, my wife stays on me about keeping lotion on me.
Yeah.
She doesn't like to look at my ashy feet, and I try to do better and keep lotion on it, but in my mind, I've been rebelling for a long time against what makes other people comfortable with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it might be a foolish battle. I can remember one time being in a shift change, working at the hospital, being in shift change, working with this nurse from a Kebulon. His name was Richard. I think he was Yoruba.
Okay.
But pretty, clean cut type of brother. I come and sit at the table, and my hands was ashy. It was probably the winter, and my hands was ashy. And I set him on the table. He immediately took out. He had a bag. That's what I'm telling you. He was a clean and cut type dude. He had like a bag with him that he brought in, and he pulled out some lotion. And he put it on his hands and he rubbed it in, and then he looked at me and then he put it back in his bag.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I definitely get it. You know what I mean? This is how we've been trained to be clean, to look our best. But what is it all about? Was it to better ourselves, or was it to appease our oppressors, to make our oppressors more comfortable with us? Go ahead. I
was gonna say that's a good question. But I think it was before we were here. You know what I'm saying? We can read the text, where it talks about washing your whole body in water. You know what I'm saying? And the sun go down, then now you clean. You know what I'm saying? So that's ceremonial clean, but it still requires the physical washing to actually get it clean. So I don't think that it started with them. I think that it's a thing that we had that would could show them we're real. That we are human. We are people. And one thing you can't say about me is, one, I stink, and two, I'm not clean. You can't say either one of those two about me. So, but yeah, my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, Con, I agree with you. I don't think that you said anything wrong. I think you made a good point. Bringing up the scriptures, referencing the scriptures on being spiritually clean, and how that really didn't have anything to do with, well, I'm not gonna say it didn't, because they washed in the water.
Right.
I just remember other points where Mashiach was speaking to the people, and he's telling them, because they were questioning his disciples about washing their hands.
Right.
And, they felt like the Pharisees felt like, if you didn't wash your hands, you were defiled, and everything you're eating is defiled. And, Mashiach was like, you're not defiled by,
what goes in,
not washing what goes in your mouth, but what comes out. So a little bit different reference there. I also know that the scriptures say that, our righteousness is as filthy rags, and then he talks about also future prophecy of cleansing us. So, we try to get clean in these showers, with the use of a rag. These scriptures and the fear of Yah is what will cleanse us spiritually. I'll yield there.
Indeed, Aki, that's 100% real. Definitely, the script, certainly makes a astronomical difference in level of clean. So all praises. I'm gonna go ahead and we'll go ahead and close it on out. Yeah, I had dozed off for just a moment.
All right.
These late nights be sometimes difficult, but I wasn't even out. I could hear, but I wouldn't respond. Like my mind was here, but I couldn't respond. So once I could respond, I was up. So all right. We do this for a specific purpose. Why do we do this? Romans chapter 10 and verse 1. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Ha'abba for Israel is that they might be saved. We want to see our people saved. We want to see our people set free. We want to see our people restored to the prominence that the Most High promised for us to be. How are we going to do it? Number one, we're going to keep the faith and the belief in the Hamashiach. And Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It is so very important to understand that in the conclusion of the whole matter, we are to fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, all the dust is settled and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged on whether we have feared the Most High and kept his commandments. Why? For this is the whole duty of man. I am your Akazaki Yahu, joined by my most esteemed Kenaniah, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Mashiach, wa Malak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel, who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say shalom, wa baruki, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, shalom, Israel.
Shalom, Mishpachah.
All praises to the Abba. Praise you, Abba Yah. Kwam Yasha Allah.
Kwam Yasha Allah.
And Barak Hashem Yahweh.